Welcome to Swala Nyeti, the law podcast that pairs a layman and a lawyer to answer your legal questions of the day. Swala Nyeti is sponsored by the law firm of Kigwata and Company Advocates and is intended for educational purposes only.
Welcome to episode 26 of Swala Nyeti. It's a brand new week. I am the lawyer, aka Wakili, Harry Karanja.
And I am the layman, Gashao Patrick.
Hey, Gashao.
Hey, hi, Wakili.
I am very good. How are you?
Guess what is back?
Tell me.
Football.
I thought you were going to say your remote.
Even better. The remote is back.
Uh-huh.
The season has begun. I think my team will win this year.
You think your team will win?
Yes, this season.
I'm afraid to ask your team on air.
Leeds United. We have just been promoted.
Clearly, you're not afraid to make your statement here. Okay, so I guess then you must be having an interesting time at home.
Quite, I must say.
That's
and, I don't know, but I didn't know wielding the remote has so much power.
Oh.
But thank God the game's only on weekends. Like, it's a power with you think I could exercise every day of the week.
Well, I'm glad that every other day of the week I have you here to help answer legal questions.
Oh, yeah.
And this week we have, what are we covering this week?
We are covering I think one of the most interesting things we have done in this episode, because the whole thing Swala Nyeti.
Okay.
Because it's something that is very close to Kenyans.
Yes.
Every Kenyan who makes any amount of money.
Yeah.
Okay, not every, but almost everyone. They think of kashamba, land.
Yes,
And
land is big.
Yeah, land is big. It's like every Kenyan's investment plan. You get car, and once you have a car, guys think, hey, where are we going to live? So everyone wants a piece of land somewhere.
Okay.
And either for speculation or to settle on. But land is a big deal. So this week we have 5 questions on land.
Okay.
And to start us off, Wakili, we have a question that was sent in by Jane.
Okay.
And this is it. Hello, my name is Jane. 2 years ago, our Chamaa approached a property owner to buy his plot for 50 million Kenya shillings. We entered into a sale agreement and paid a 10 million deposit to the seller's lawyer. We agreed that the transfer documents would be ready and the balance would be paid within 90 days. Unfortunately, we had not gotten the money by 90 days, but asked for an extension to raise it. On day 120, we explained that our Sacco had informed us they would give us the balance if we gave them the title deed. When we asked the lawyer for the title, he said that we had delayed and the seller had found another buyer. When we asked for our money, he said by law we had lost the money. We now have no money, no title, and no land. But the lawyer is driving around a big car. Can he be forced to refund us?
Okay. Let's see if I understand what the problem is right here. So this lady, who is a member of a Chamaa, seemed to have got into a land transaction. Jane, I think, has gotten into a land transaction whereby they were to purchase a plot and they paid 10 million shillings towards the purchase of this plot worth 50 million. But they did not complete the payments in time. And because of that, the lawyer told them that they were not going to be able to complete the transaction and that the seller had found another buyer. And now they're trying to see whether they can get their money back.
Yes.
From the lawyer.
And the lawyer is already driving a big car, Akili. You Akili. You see the guy got money from these poor ladies. Maybe it's their pension. No mercy. There is.
Geshaw, I just have to stop you there right now. I know Shakespeare said kill all lawyers, but I mean, there is nothing which we have seen from this question that would squarely put blame on the lawyer. In fact, I think before we talk about whether a lawyer can refund or not, here we really have to establish who is truly to blame? What were the obligations of every party in this agreement? Because the obligations of the parties will determine what resolution, if any, these members of the Chamaa have.
Okay.
And when it comes to obligations, what would define that is the sale agreement. Now, at the very beginning, they talk about how entering into a sale agreement. And something I should just point out is when it comes to land transactions, a sale agreement must be written for it to be enforceable.
There's no audio. We cannot agree. Wakili and I are going to sell and buy land.
A podcast agreement, no.
Yeah.
I don't think. So it has to be written for it to be enforceable. So what we have to do is look at the sale agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And the sale agreement usually spells out who has the obligation and whether, if they breach these obligations, what the consequences shall be.
Okay, Wakili.
So the only thing that we can tell from what Jane has told us is that there was an agreement that the balance would be paid within 90 days.
Yes.
And they did not pay it within 90 days.
They hadn't gotten the 40 million.
They
balance.
hadn't gotten the balance, but it's not clear what would have happened then, what the consequences shall be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make an assumption here that this contract that they have was drafted by lawyers, and what most lawyers will do when drafting a contract is to incorporate the LSK conditions of sale.
LSK conditions of sale.
Yes, the LSK, the Law Society of Kenya,
Yes.
has developed conditions of sale which are used in most property sale and purchase agreements.
Okay, makes sense.
Just to make it easier for both parties to know what the rights and obligations of either parties are and have a standard document. So this document is usually incorporated in most sale of land agreements, and I'll assume that the same case was here. And if that's the case, if the LSK conditions of sale were in place in this transaction, then we can determine what the obligations of the purchaser were.
Of the people from the Chamaa, of Jane.
Exactly. And what would happen in case they did not meet the obligations.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the purchaser's obligation, there's normally what we call the completion date.
Yes.
Which is the day which is specified by when the purchaser needs to have paid the balance of the purchase price.
Yes.
And in exchange, the seller gives the buyer all the completion documents.
So Wakili, that means that it's not the seller who gives me as a buyer the title with my name.
No. According to the LSK conditions of sale, the seller's obligations are to give you the completion documents, and these documents would then allow you to go and register the property in your name.
Okay, what are the things that might be in these completion documents?
Completion documents normally would be, of course, the original title. It would be the details of the seller, their PIN, ID, passport photos.
Okay.
It would be a completed transfer form and many other things.
So they give those documents to me, and I go and transfer the land to myself.
So normally there are advocates who will be acting for both of you.
Okay.
So usually they will give.
These are the advocates who have eaten money, Wakili. Anyway,
hold up. I am going to defend my colleagues. We have not said any. There's no proof anywhere here that such a case has taken place.
There's a big car.
Yeah, most advocates have big cars.
Okay,
that's common. That has nothing to do with these transactions. But look. The obligations of the purchaser, like I said, are to pay the balance of the purchase price. And when the purchase price is paid, then the seller would give them the completion documents. But in this case, as Jane says, they did not pay the balance of the purchase price by the completion date, which was on day 90.
And that therefore means that they lose now.
So what happens, there are certain consequences that can arise based on the LSK conditions of sale when you fail to pay the balance of the purchase price
by 90 days.
By 90 days. Number one is that you can lose 10% of the purchase price that you paid as a deposit. You forfeit it.
And in this case, it would be 10% of 50 million, which
10%
is
of 50
5M.
million, which would be 5 million.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing is that the seller is
Mhm.
now allowed to sell
To another party.
to another party.
They don't give me anything. Like after 90 days, they don't tell me, I am going. They don't even communicate to me.
You're right. So based on the LSK conditions of sale, they need to give you what we call a completion notice.
Okay.
So they need to tell you that unless you, on day 90, by day 90, I mean you haven't paid.
Mhm.
So you have breached the agreement.
Yes.
So they'll usually tell you, unless now you comply with the contractual requirement and pay the amount which is due within the next 21 days, the minimum period is 21 days.
21. Uh-huh.
Then, if you fail to do that, we'll go ahead and rescind this agreement. Basically, assume that this agreement never.
Yeah, it's non-existent.
Exactly. But there are some consequences. One, you will forfeit 10% of
Mm-hmm.
the deposit, the 10% of the purchase price,
Yes.
and we are able to sell this property to someone else.
Okay. You raised a very important issue. So they have to give me a notice if we are under the LSK conditions of sale.
Assuming that
We are
they
assuming.
incorporated it,
Yes.
they would need to give you a completion notice.
And in those 21 extra days, if I pay,
If you
the
pay-
thing goes on as usual.
Yes, well, not exactly, because in addition, they are also allowed to charge you a figure to compensate for the time lost.
Okay.
So this figure is usually based on a contract rate, and it would be kind of penalizing the purchaser for the delay in making completion.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Now, why do we have a lawyer in this transaction? Why can't we just do that between the buyer and the seller?
Back to killing all lawyers. Listen,
Yeah.
lawyers, I mean, land is probably the biggest investment that most people make. You know, the sums involved are usually quite large. And lawyers play a very important role in such transactions, especially ones which are not being completed on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
They usually act as what we call stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And stakeholders act in a position of trust, whereby when you make the payment as a purchaser, the payment is made to the seller's lawyer.
To the seller's lawyer. Okay.
So the seller's lawyer is holding that money in trust until the seller completes their obligations to the purchaser. So until the seller transfers or gives the completion documents, the lawyer is not supposed to release that money
to the
seller. Okay?
But would the seller lose out if they give me the transaction documents and I have not paid the lawyer? Would you lose out as a seller?
So usually it's you pay the lawyer first.
The full amount.
Balance, yes.
Okay.
The outstanding balance. And then the lawyer transfers. Then the lawyer, yes, you get the completion documents.
So what you mean is like the lawyer acts like a third party trustee.
Correct.
The only time the seller is comfortable transferring the documents to the person buying is when the lawyer tells him, I have the whole amount, you can transfer. Otherwise, there's a chance that you can transfer and lose the money.
Mm-hmm.
You can give me the documents and I have not finished paying and I am gone. The land is mine, you don't have your money. And there's a chance that also I have what the other option would be that you refuse the documents and I have paid.
Exactly. And
in that case, the law will refund me because now you're not willing to sell again.
Exactly.
I see how he acts in trust.
Yeah, so this is an important role that the lawyers play. And maybe here, this is where I will say that the lawyer could potentially be at blame because the lawyer is not supposed to release that money to the seller unless, like in this case, assuming that the LSK conditions of sale were in place, unless the seller demonstrates that he was ready and able and willing to complete the transaction, he gave the completion notice as required, but the other party did not respond within the prescribed time. So then he is allowed to release.
I knew the lawyer had an issue. Hold up, Wahili, hold up. Are you telling me that the seller also has to be ready to transfer?
Of course.
So let me paint for you a scenario.
Yes.
I give the lawyer money
Yes.
and the buyer is not ready.
Yes.
What can I do?
The buyer is not ready or the seller is not ready?
Oh, let me rephrase.
Yes.
I am the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
I give your lawyer money.
Mm-hmm.
Full amount, 50 million.
Yes.
But your documents are not in order.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you have not paid rates. You have
Yes.
not paid. You had taken a debt on that land.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot give me the title. You're not ready to transfer.
Yes.
Can you be punished? Is there anything against you?
There is. So if in this case I'm the one who is at fault,
Mm-hmm.
then you can also claim compensation from me. And the compensation, like we mentioned before, would be at the contract rate.
Contract rate, what does that mean?
So usually there's a rate we've agreed. Like if you fail to complete the requirements by a specific date, you'll pay me a penalty of X percentage of the purchase price for every
That's
day.
interesting.
Or
So I
something
just
like
pay
that.
you less. Anyway, I owe you money for the land. And you're supposed to compensate you. So let's square it out.
Well, that's assuming that the seller is able to complete the
Yes.
transaction. But if they're not, remember the lawyer is holding the money in trust and should return it to the purchaser, and the purchaser can rescind the contract.
Now, the interesting thing here, Wakili, is that you said 10%, which would make it 5 million.
Yes.
Yet they paid 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the other 5 million is the one the lawyer used to buy the car, isn't it?
I plead the fifth. No comment.
But what in any case, what should happen to the other 5 million?
The other money, which if it's not subject to a claim for compensation, should be refunded to the purchaser.
To the Chamaa.
Yes.
Well, there you had it. I knew land was always going to be a complicated issue. But everyone in my case here seems to be at fault. Look, these people did not meet their obligation in 90 days. The lawyer seemed to have passed money to the owner of the land against that is breach of the trust they hold. And lastly, there is no mention of the completion notice, which raises the question that the seller may not have had the documents in order. Everyone is at fault.
Well, that's we like things which are more black and white, of course. But what I'll say is this: I think you have summarized pretty accurately, but all that is conditional on the fact whether the LSK conditions of sale were in place and whether there was a sale agreement that is enforceable to begin with. And without knowing that, we can't really assign blame.
Ladies and gentlemen, you had it in Swala Nyeti. It's a complicated issue, and unless we can identify what is stipulated in the sale agreement, this is a very complicated issue. You might need a lawyer, unfortunately, to help you out in this. And that is it for us today. Join us tomorrow for our next episode, which we got a question that says, can I prevent the community from crossing my land to fetch water from an adjoining river? Like your piece of land has a river and people are coming to fetch. Can you stop them? And to get the answer to that, join us tomorrow. And from me, goodbye.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to Swala Nyeti. Special thanks to our layman, Gashal Patrick, and our lawyer, Harry Karanja. If you have a legal question that you want answered, send us a WhatsApp message on 0708 111 222 or email us at admin@swalanyeti.org. You can find downloads to all our podcast episodes on our website www.swalanyeti.org.